This event is the Next Evolution AWE Nite Chicago, which I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with AWE, Augmented World Expo, but there are 32 AWE Nites all over the world that take place. This is obviously Chicago one. This, as I mentioned earlier, we are streaming to awe.live. Awe.live is kind of like a LinkedIn. It's a community for people who are working in XR space. If you're not familiar with it, please check it out. That is where we're streaming to tonight, as well as it's tied in with all of the other AWE Nite Chicagos, as well as or AWE Nites around the world, as well as the large-scale AWE expos that take place around the world. There are 3 of them. There's USA taking place this year, May 31st to June 2nd in Santa Clara, August 30th to 31st in Singapore, and EU October 26th and 27th in Vienna, Austria. They do have some other upcoming events as well. Putting them here so that the people on awe.live and other places can see them. But if you check them out, just go to awe.live. You will find out about all the other types of events that they have running, as well as Awe Academy if you want to learn about working in the XR space. The other thing I'll mention really quickly is that this event is produced by an organization that we founded several years ago called VRAR Chicago. You'll notice that there was Matt up at the front who was checking all of you in. We have a table over here. Matt will be over here towards the end of the event. What VRAR Chicago does, in addition to producing events like this and helping other organizations to produce events like this, is a lot of consulting in the XR space for, again, helping anybody to sort of answer any question that might have been out of the ordinary, just trying to figure out what you're doing in XR space. Feel free to reach out to VRAR Chicago. Before I get to our other sponsors, I should also mention, this is a completely volunteer-run event. So, Matt is volunteering. Where's Ben? There's Ben. Ben's going to be running our mics later for Q&A. Pretty much everybody you see working at the event, myself, we are all volunteers. Nobody is being paid to be here. We're all doing this as part of the Next Evolution is actually a registered 501c3. So the event itself is a charity. If you feel it in your heart to support us, we would love that. That's all. That's about as far as I'll make for a request there. With that, we do also have a lot of sponsors. You can see them here. Who is going to be speaking for BUNDLAR today? You're speaking on stage. You're the presenter. Lauren, do you want to do the BUNDLAR intro? Oh, yeah. And I can roll the video if you need me to.
On? Am I good? Okay, I'm really excited to be here. This is actually my first time live post-pandemic in person, so I'm excited to see a lot of people outside of VirBela. Not that it's wonderful, but we're from BUNDLAR. We're born out of 1871. We're based out of Chicago. We're a no-code augmented reality platform. We provide training solutions for enterprise organizations and the Department of Defense. So we're really excited to be here to learn about what everybody else is doing and more ways we can make this software easy and accessible for people to utilize.
Thank you, Lauren. Not bad, considering she literally had no idea she was doing that until I just called her. The next sponsor that we have to talk about is our physical venue sponsor. We are all, those of us who are at 1871 are currently talking about it. Normally they would have somebody here to present. They are not here at the moment. But if you're not familiar with 1871, this space, it is a technology incubator. It is the largest technology, I think it's, what was it, voted the #1 world's technology incubator pre-pandemic when they actually were giving those types of awards away. I believe there's something in the range of 400 or 500 companies that have come out of this particular organization. So check them out. Obviously, we do the space here. We're very thankful that they allow us to use our auditorium once a month. Yeah, that's 1871. Is Sarah in VirBela to give a VirBela welcome?
Always. She is. Welcome. Come on up, Sarah.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I just want to do a shout out to our amazing hosts and hostess. Caroline, what is your title again?
My title for the VRAR Chicago or my title for my title?
Either one. It was fabulous.
Oh, I'm just co-host for this group event, but I'm a principal and founder of my company. So, you know, I play a lot of hats. We all do. And that's thanks to Matt and Tom and the whole team with the VRAR Chicago.
Indeed. Well, and this cohort have been thought leaders for a good long time, as mentioned. So VirBela is so pleased and honored to be the platform to help support and open campus as the world I'm the VIP of community here at VirBela Open Campus, and my MO is just to help to be a community organizer, really, to help connect all these great folks. We have some great Colorado connections in the chat, and hello to all you amazing folks, entrepreneurs there in Chicago. Great to see you. So thank you. That's
Thank you,
VirBela.
Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Back to you, Matt.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Caroline. And actually, after that, we need to talk about our presenting sponsor, who is going to take it right back to Caroline. So back to you, Caroline, with XR Women.
Yes. So on the so XR Women started in 2020 by Julie Smithson and Sophia Mushasha and Karen Alexander, and it really started for the impetus of helping to bring more women into the space as this industry is being built out. And we have been able to go to multiple worlds in our events. We meet on Wednesdays from 11:30 to 1:30, and we have had so many incredible speakers. We also have built a full-blown museum within a platform called frame.io, and you can visit that and you can see, and feel free to reach out to me if you would like to attend, because we believe that everyone can become and you know, women allies are welcome to learn and grow as XR women. So we have been around for now almost going on our third year, and we're really excited about what 2023 has in store for us. So thank you so much, Matt.
And thank you, Caroline. Okay, so we do have another whole bunch of partners that have helped us out. We have Venity, Independent Game Developers Association of Chicago, 2112, which is Chicago's creative entrepreneurship center, and VR Motion Learning. And with that, one of the things that we've also started this year, which is relatively new, and I'm going to give everybody in VirBela and in the physical space a warning, you might want to get your cell phone out for this, because we're going to pop a QR code up now. We will also try to show it at the end of the event. But one of the things that we are doing with Venity is there are NFTs tied to these events. Every one of these events that we run this year, there will be a unique NFT for the event. You can only collect it on the night of the event. So for those of you watching all live, you can get it right now if you would like, but it will be turned off if you try to do it tomorrow or the next day on the recording. The only way to get it is this QR code. Here's how we're doing this with the NFTs. Every NFT that people collect throughout the year is an entry to win a prize. We're assuming, and there's no guarantees yet, but the prize is likely going to be a VR headset that we will give away in December. And so if you come to 12 events, you get 12 entries. That's how that works. But every NFT that is collected, that is the prize. So I'm showing the QR code for a few more seconds. Again, I'll make it available towards the end of the event. But that is how you collect it. If anyone has any other questions, please let me know. It will be back up again. And I'll stop with that right now. And we're actually now past all of our opening remarks, I believe, and getting to the event. And we're going to start with our first speaker, who is from Northrup Grumman. So I'm giving him a little bit of a warning, Aaron. And Aaron is going to present really quickly. If you need the slide change, please let me know. Aaron, you want to try unmuting yourself? Actually, Caroline, I'm going to toss it to you.
Yeah, so I'm happy to at least give a little quick intro to Aaron. Aaron Rosa, he's a software engineer and XR software engineer at Northrup Grumman. He has multiple awards as a storyteller and in special effects and other things, and I'd like to give him the opportunity to introduce himself, but we're really thrilled for you to be here, Aaron. Please introduce yourself. Welcome.
Hi, I was. Thank you for that heads up there, Matt. My name is. Oh, you know what? I should probably turn on my camera, right?
Terrific! So you could just click on that little camera icon right next to the 3 hamburger sign there. Let me know if it does not work, or if you are not able to. You can also click on the screen itself. There you go. Excellent. There you go. Hi.
Hi, how are you all doing?
There he
software
is.
engineer, right? Like, you should be able
Yay!
to figure that out quickly.
He's got a
Hi,
perfect bookshelf
Erin.
behind him, everybody. Just notice the bookshelf.
Look,
It's perfect.
color organized. I'm
Isn't
so
that
surprised.
great? Doesn't that speak to a wonderfully clutter-free mind?
Okay. We
I'm
are on a
glad.
time, so I'm going to be a
Yes.
good timer here. So take it away, Erin.
Great. Just for everyone's benefit, that is not my bookshelf. This is my wife's bookshelf. She's an accountant. So as you can see, our personal finances are neatly organized. Okay, so yeah, thank you for the introduction. My name is Aaron Rosa. I'm a staff software engineer at the Annapolis campus of Northrup Grumman, and I specialize particularly in undersea warfare and providing AR, XR, immersive solutions for training, maintenance, and basically anything else that the DoD or any of our customers or the company wants to throw at me. You'd be surprised how many weird asks I get, and how much fun it is to figure those out. If you've seen my bio, I have a background from the Naval Academy, and then I have a master's degree in journalism from the University of Maryland. And I've been working in the VR/AR space for about 5 years now. On the side, outside of Northrop Grumman, I actually am also studying to be a pastor as well. And I've actually led a church for 2 years in both alt space and spatial. So this is really my home.
Super cool. Super
in a lot
cool.
of different ways. You'd be surprised the looks I get from basically everyone at this point. So
Well,
I'm very
I think
excited.
it's breaking barriers, right? It's awesome. Okay,
It
sorry.
is.
Go ahead.
Nothing's
Go ahead.
ever easy, right? When you do it the first time. I'm very excited to be here and to answer any questions and to hear from these other panelists. I was looking over some of their bios, and I'm really excited to see what's going on in the Air Force, particularly. I spent 8 years flying as a flight officer in the Navy, and I've been in the reserves for the last 4 years. And hopefully I'm going to ride that train until I retire. So I am really excited to see how this is working out in industry and how that's matriculating into our military as well.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Erin. Back to you, Matt.
I've got Aaron's slides up. Is he going to present to the slides?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were just doing introductions right now.
No, we're
That's
there.
fine. Okay, terrific. Okay, Erin, let me know if you need any assistance. It looks like it's up, and we'll
So
give it
this
just a
part,
second.
should I turn my camera off for this part?
I think that makes sense. Right, that makes sense. And then we can see your slides and you can speak to them. That sounds great.
All right, you're too kind. So like I said, I work particularly with mission system solutions at Northrop Grumman. So there are various departments within Northrop Grumman, aviation sector, there's defense systems, innovation systems. I work in mission systems. And so we support various DoD and intelligence community customers. And I specialize particularly in special access programs, kind of like the higher classification type stuff, particularly in logistics and engineering support. And we'll get back to, later on in the slides, we'll get back to why I think that's kind of the forefront of this industry right now. So one of the things that I think makes this a really fruitful environment for VR/AR, particularly, are the fact that because we do multiple special access programs and smaller programs, they have less dedicated infrastructure, and so there is a high desire for digital twins, digital transformation type products, replicability, deployability, and high training fidelity. I know I just read my slides, so I'm not going to waste your time on that. No, sorry, you can go back still. And so what this offers us primarily is the because program managers and government leaders have to have a smaller pot of money to do all their training and development. They don't have the large budgets that maybe say like an Air Wing or Surfland would have to implement like a training facility or things like that. So what we've been able to do is promote AR VR solutions for training and familiarity with various platforms and operations. All right, now we can go next slide. So some of the challenges we face, we're all innovators here. Nothing's easy the first time, right? So some of the challenges that we face, particularly within our community and within the government, have been this idea of a climate that's largely resistant to technological change. It's not necessarily if you're coming up with a new missile or a new telescope or something like that, but when you're working with kind of classified programs that are classified at really high levels, there is a very stark security culture that is resistant to new sensors, new technology, particularly those that are primarily developed for consumer technology. So all of the things that you would think that would be a security concern in that, as far as like foreign supply chains, unfamiliarity with the tech. So what we're finding is a lot of security personnel or even the IT personnel are more familiar with your standard server setup, but not so much with a VR headset, and can't really understand how maybe the laser from a Vive base station would transmit data wirelessly to a headset. And it takes a lot of communication and education on that front. Another thing that we have a problem with is talent, because our community and our programs are classified. What we need is that not only that skill, which as any of you can probably attest to is very difficult to find, but also the eligibility for a clearance. So that's something that we're running into as a little bit of a glut there. And then we have unique requirements. All of our programs, because they are in classified environments, require the ability to work completely offline. So independent of the internet, never having been connected to the internet is one of the security things that we have to deal with. This sounds like it wouldn't be that big of a headache, but you see a lot of unforeseen problems like activating software or authenticating licenses for critical software for the actual network. So we've had to come up with some really interesting workarounds for that, and it's something that I'm really hoping industry is going to move forward on. Sorry, I was checking a message that just popped up. I did want to make
My
sure
apologies. I'm trying to keep time here, Aaron. It's okay. You go.
Okay. And then partially the most concerning thing that I've seen within our industry is the way that the industry is trending more towards consumers. So it's not really because they're trying to get that large product base and use base. You're not seeing a whole lot of design with the intent for marketing to programs like us. So things like inside out systems, things that are headsets that are geared mainly towards cloud streaming, like processing offsite and then streaming to the headset. Those are amazing and they're wonderful and I love them, and I love playing Beat Saber with my kids too, or playing Half-Life Alyx, but they're not really helpful when it comes to our case needs. So that's something that's concerning to us, and what I'm hoping we'll see change a little bit. And you can see like the bottom takeaway there. It's getting harder. It's not getting easier. How am I doing on time?
You're terrific. You have about 15 more seconds and then we're done, but don't worry about it.
Okay.
I'm not going to be the crazy woman about the time. I'll adjust. Okay.
I will be very quick on this last part. Okay. So some specific use cases, we've been doing fully operational simulators. Our customers don't need to build up a classified skiff and outfit it with actual hard physical simulators. We've been able to bring those into VR, and it's had great success with that. We do engineering collaboration. All these things are pretty normal in the unclassified world, but they are huge mountains to move over classified nets and with different permissions. And so this has been a huge step forward in that world. We use rapid human engineering testing. So if we're designing something to build it, it's becoming very easy for us to bring in CAD models, things like that, to simulate putting things together, taking them apart to see where issues might arise. And then, of course, we have our kind of our base level like HUD information dissemination, where we're using standard, AR tech to stream databases and information to a head-mounted set that is that a maintainer or an operator can wear while operating on equipment. Believe that might be my last slide.
Okay, terrific. That's great timing, Aaron. Thank you so much for that. And I would like to ask a couple of questions. And one of those questions is really about what was happening in your world, because you have been involved in a world that has traditionally not been necessarily, as you said, adapting to and innovating in a way in technology. So what was happening in your professional world when you realized, oh, wow, like this is changing things. I need to learn more about this, and I need to bring this to an environment that traditionally has not embraced this. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So I got into VR in grad school, and this was while I was still active duty Navy, and it wasn't until I had some friends who were cleared on certain programs at Northrup Grumman, and they were kind enough to arrange for a position to be open. And when I finally got read in on a lot of these programs and kind of saw what we're doing behind the scenes, the fundamental question that I had to answer was how do we fulfill this need for high fidelity training with essentially a comparatively shoestring budget and an incredible amount of constraints? And the best solution that I could think of was AR VR. Now, that was an easy solution to come to, but making that actually happen, which eventually took about 2 years to get all of the tech approved and to kind of build that grassroots momentum for it, that was very difficult, and it really was economic constraints and a desire to break down some walls to open up the space for a lot more tools that we could use on a broader scale.
That's really that really says it all. But I know that one of the things you mentioned that was needed so much was education, and I worked in the higher education space for many years, and I understand completely, and also then as a consultant. So maybe you could give us a little bit of a sneak peek about what does that mean when you talk about education, because these are regulated industries. These are industries that are very set, and I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit about that education process.
Sure. One of the things that I've found is that in order to make this seem as non-threatening as possible to someone who has to put their name on a bottom line signature for security approval, IT approval, things of that nature, is that you really need to understand where they're coming from as well. So part of the education, the education was a two-way street. So for me, I had to read a significant amount of their security documents. I interviewed a lot of people. This is my journalism training right here, coming back into to perspective here. But I interviewed a lot of security IT people who were involved in this world and listened to their concerns, what they look for as far as potential vulnerabilities and threats on networks and things like that. And then knowing how the equipment worked, that's from my aviation background. Before you get in an airplane, you know everything about every nut and bolt down to the cellular level and what can happen if it goes wrong. So I applied that to the tech that we use for these systems. We use Vario XR3s for a lot of our systems for multiple reasons. But I got very good at understanding how those headsets worked and how they interacted with base stations and with Steam VR and the various other Unity, other programs that we use to develop. And then once I knew how my stuff worked, and once I knew how the equipment worked, and once I knew what they were afraid of, or concerned about, I was able to present the research and the conclusions that I had in such a way that it directly spoke and allayed some of their concerns with that. So that's what I'm talking about when I say education.
Got it. Got it. Well, that's amazing. I know that we'll have some other questions as we open it up to the audience, but I'd like to turn this back over to, and thank you so much for that. That's powerful, and there's so much more I could ask questions right now, but I will turn it back over to Matt. Thank you, Aaron.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Caroline. And just FYI, so for those of you who've been here before, you kind of noticed we're having a little bit of a different format. We're not having people present for a whole time. They're going to do a very quick presentation, a little bit more Q&A. Sort of found that this will help drive the conversation a little bit more. Up next, we have Amie from BUNDLAR. She's ready to go. And she's one of our live presenters. And there's a microphone right there that hopefully will have enough battery power.
On? Yeah, you all can hear me?
We can. We can hear you on this side too.
Fantastic. Dive in, Matt. Great. I'm Amie Abendroth. I am the Director of Customer Success at BUNDLAR in Chicago. Sorry. And I do need to speak louder because the tone of my voice apparently does not carry. So hopefully you all can hear me. I have been with BUNDLAR for about 1.5 years now. I work with our clients basically from onboarding through the life cycle of our relationship. So every detail about every project we have. So here I just got a little bit about me, things I'm passionate about, my family. I've got 3 kids. They are 11, 15, and 16. I've got a dog, golden retriever, who is our quarantine dog, who is probably wondering where the heck I am today. He's not used to being home alone. Has learned to balance things on his notes. He has his own Instagram. You can see I have a very busy social life. Technology, innovation, education, and success. So I basically have always had an interest in all things that are innovative, always looking for better ways to do things, looking for better solutions. I went to school for education. I went to school to be an educator. However, I got sucked into technology and realized that I had the vision and the ability to pursue a career that also could incorporate education. So ended up working in as a contractor for a lot of big corporations. And then just recently in the last 4 years or so, started working with startups. And so I find that I fit very well in startups. I like chaos. I like challenges. I like to know that everything is always changing. And so that works really well for me. Thank you. That helps a lot. No, that's great. And so you can switch. You guys already got an overview for BUNDLAR. So what I will say about, do you have something to say about that? Okay. What I will say about BUNDLAR is that the vision of the founders was to bring the ability to create AR to everyone. And so that is really what our platform is working to do. That is part of our larger goal. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about specifically today was we have an engagement with DoD, Space Force, and the U.S. Air Force, working with a team that does training for astronaut recovery. We've been working with them for almost 2 years now, a contract where we have gone through the training. We have developed an augmented version of all of the training. So we've actually sat in on the training in person several times. We have worked with the students and the instructors to understand what their needs are. what they're looking to get out of their hands-on training and what they're looking to have as possible supplemental training, and have worked to develop that with them. Part of the challenge is that some of the equipment that they're working with for training has got limited availability. It's extremely expensive, and it's not always accurate. So the training materials that they're working with, specifically the space capsules, are not updated with the actual space capsules. So they get this training. It usually happens for about a year. They're only required to do it every 3 years. And at any point, they can be called out on a mission to actually perform this recovery operation. And it is a life and death situation. There are things that can be extremely dangerous. The conditions can be extremely dangerous. And so it's imperative that they understand exactly what they need to do, that they follow the very linear instructions that have been set for them, and that they don't miss anything that could be critical in recovering the astronauts or making sure that they stay alive as well. So what we've done is we've been working with them, created this entire training session in augmented reality. We have also taken a lot of the materials. So there's the actual hands-on training, and then there's all of these support materials that they also hand off to all of these troops once they're finished with training. It's a lot of text on a lot of PowerPoint slides. Part of the value that we see here is as a refresher course. So say these guys get called out a year, 6 months, whatever it is from when they do their original training, they have the opportunity to run through the entire training course or just pieces of the training course in augmented reality. And what that does is essentially allows them as close to hands-on training that kind of refreshes their memory, them an opportunity to recall their hands-on training and remember those critical steps that they learned about within those training programs. We've created custom models of all of the different pieces and all of the equipment that they work with. We also have, it's important that they understand where everything is. A lot of the equipment that they are supplied gets pushed off of a C-130 into the ocean. It's strapped onto a pallet. And there's a lot of equipment in there. They know exactly what they need to get. They need to know where it is. All of this gives them the close to hands-on refresher as possible to be able to locate exactly what they're looking for when they're looking. So essentially, these visualizations here are just some demonstrations of the space capsule and one of the instruments that they get trained on. But again, the whole thing is in augmented reality, and it's extremely comprehensive. We've run through it with 3 sets of trainees now, and the positive feedback is overwhelming. They all believe that it is helpful to what they're doing and that it's going to provide value. The other thing that we have suggested is giving it to the trainees before the training session. What that does is gives them kind of a leg up, right? They have the opportunity to run through the training session. What we saw in our last session was that they actually came in and they had questions going in. These are not guys who typically are going to proactively ask a ton of questions, especially if they're in a big group, a diverse group with other troops that they don't necessarily know. And so this is a great way to get them thinking, get them talking, get them interacting with the trainers to get the maximum amount of information. So augmented reality, this is just, these are basics, right? Augmented reality, faster onboarding, experimental learning, contextual information. Again, having that visual. All of these guys said, we would much rather have the hands-on training. But in lieu of the hands-on training, augmented reality provides us something that PowerPoint slides don't. So that is that contextual learning. And these are just some stats from our lovely marketing team about 32% increase in productivity, 70% cost reduction, and 31% increase in attention. So again, augmented reality works.
Thank you, Amie. Okay, so questions for you. And I'll start with the easy one, which was similar to what was asked of Aaron, which is, what was happening kind of with you? Where were you? Kind of how did your career progress into working in augmented reality? Where did you start? Where did you come from? How did you get into the AR space?
So I was just chatting out here. I started in digital space a long time ago, and started working with technology and websites and emerging technology. I ended up working as a contractor for a lot of big companies, supporting global launches of things like websites and more on the marketing side. From there, kind of started to really pivot into software as a service. I have an interest in being a part of something and influencing things, the outcomes of things, and so.
And in your current role, how much of your role involves educating or training kind of your stakeholders and your customers? And if so, like, what do you have to train them on? Like, what do they need to learn?
I would say the majority of my role right now is education in some way, shape, or form, right? So even the customers who know what they're looking for, it is about educating them around what good AR experience is, right? Everyone understands AR. Everyone really understands, especially the gimmicky side of AR. But I think helping people understand where the benefit is with augmented reality is a big part of what I do on a regular basis. And then just, sure that we're being strategic in the way that we continue to evolve our product to support what our customers need. So.
All right. Last question for you. What are some of the challenges that your customers are facing that you're helping to solve?
There are a lot of challenges. I would say that I'm helping to solve. I think, right now it really is just trying to create something that is immersive, that is interesting. And obviously, everyone is looking to do cost-saving measures right now. There is a lot of interest in trying to create training that not only has a great outcome, so successful and effective, but also cost savings. So whether that is reducing the overall amount of time or the amount of materials that you've got to bring in.
We can dig on it a little bit. So if you're reducing, so this is supplementing or in some cases replacing physical in-person training. So how does that speak to cost savings? A as a replacement, obviously as a replacement, there's the cost of running the training, transporting equipment, transporting people. But in terms of cost savings, supplementing the training, how does that work? How does it save them money? So for when the AR is being used to supplement the physical training, how is that cost savings or time savings or efficiency? How does that help?
From an efficiency standpoint, I would say the fact that it's accessible before, during, after, obviously, is a huge benefit. And the fact that, it is something that can be updated very, very easily. So you can't always update it.
Thank you, Amie. All right, up next in our remote space, we have Colonel Cheryl Lockhart, who is the Chief Nurse Executive down at MacDill Air Force Base. So this is going to be a little bit interesting because I'm actually going to try and do the live question and answer session from here while she's presenting virtually. We'll see how this goes. But she does get to present herself first, so I will mute for that part. Colonel Lockhart, can we hear you?
Yeah, welcome, Colonel Lockhart. If you would like to come up onto the stage and join me right over here, we would love. Oh, there you are, and we get to see her in real life here on camera. Yay! Welcome,
If
Colonel
I can drive
Lockhart.
this, please. Here I go.
Fabulous.
There we go. So, hello. I am very honored to have been asked here. I'm actually presenting from Utah tonight as my daughter is getting married tomorrow. In fact, the new in-laws are downstairs right now, so I'm risking family alienation by being on here. So This is pretty important to me. So first off, as you said, my name is Colonel Cheryl Lockhart. I am the Chief Nurse Executive at the 6th Medical Group that is at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa. So yes, I'm in Utah and freezing body parts off here right now. I do not own clothing for what they've got going on here, so it's been a couple interesting days. Down at MacDill, as I said, I'm the chief nurse of what is essentially an ambulatory care clinic where we take care of outpatient clinics, and that'll become important here in a second. My background is critical care. I have been an aeromedical evacuation nurse. I've been a critical care air transport team nurse. I've also deployed as an ICU nurse, as a wing plans officer, and I was enlisted to start. So I have a pretty diverse background. And how did I get into immersive technology? I'll answer that real quick, and then I'll go into my slides. My son gave me a set of VR goggles a couple years ago, and I've been completely obsessed with them ever since. So as I talk about in my slide deck here in a second, when I could not do the training that I was used to doing because of COVID, I pivoted to see what could be done in AR, VR, and that's how I came about that. And I'll go into my slides now. If that's time for you guys, you need to tell me if
Great.
that happened.
No, sounds great. Fabulous. So now if you just click that little.
No, she can leave her camera on, actually. We can see her slides on the center screen.
Okay, great. Take it away now. Now we want to make sure that she can see her slides.
I see me. I don't see my slides.
Okay. So then if you minimize your screen that you currently have open, then I bet you that you might be able to.
Oh, that's me.
She should just click the center screen.
There we go. Okay, great. And I'm going to turn you
Terrific.
into advance, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. We're good to go then. As I said, I'm going to be talking about virtual and augmented reality training at the 6th Medical Group, which is a little different for you guys because I'm presenting as a user of what you guys are designing for us. So hopefully this will give you some clue as to how your end users in the DoD are using the training that you're creating and what our gaps are, because if you don't know what we need, then how will you ever create the content for us? Next. So there has to be a disclaimer. This is Colonel Lockhart talking. This is not the official policy of the United States Air Force. You will see in here slides from some of the vendors that we're working with. This does not constitute an endorsement of those companies. We did purchase their products, but I am not allowed to be a endorser of those products. So legal stuff aside, everything you see in here are things I put together, so don't hold the Air Force accountable for what I'm talking about. Next. So first off, what do we do in the military medical side in the first place? Well, we do a lot of high fidelity simulation, high fidelity mannequins, the mannequins that are computerized, they breathe, they sweat, they bleed. Everything is a never-ending quest, as it says, to simulate the operational environment. We want to stress our medics so that when they are downrange in the actual battlefield formations or in an actual deployment setting with hot and cold running casualties, this isn't the first time they've been stressed. So we try to create these realistic training environments to train them. We use high fidelity mannequins that, like I said, they bleed, they do everything. We use low fidelity mannequins to put in IVs and stuff. And we have standardized patient field exercise. That's kind of the gold standard, but we're talking about VRAR. So I'm going to tell you how VRAR is actually helping us meet the gap in ways that our high fidelity mannequins can't. Next. So ambulatory care in the garrison, trauma care on the deployment. So my nurses, my techs, my physicians, my PAs, my med techs, when they're not deployed, they're doing outpatient care, which means, they're saying, tell me about your health today. Tell me about your cold. They're taking maybe blood pressures, and that's it. And yet the requirement is that I keep them trained to go downrange in a conflict-ridden environment and be able to provide trauma care and be able to function on an inpatient unit. So there is a mismatch between what they do every day and what I need them to do downrange. Now, as I said, we have lots of high-fidelity mannequins. All these small outpatient clinics in the Air Force have high-fidelity mannequins. But the equipment that we would use downrange, the IV pumps, the ventilators, the Codmans for intracranial pressure monitoring, all this high-tech equipment, we don't have any of that. So they can't practice hands-on on that equipment using those high-fidelity mannequins. Not only that, but we have a very limited education and training staff at each one of our military training facilities where all of our medical staff is sitting. Also, the folks that we need to train to keep ready to go downrange, they're taking care of patients every day. So we have to pull them out of patient care in order to send them down to get trained. So that means if we're doing high fidelity mannequin training where there's fake blood and they're dragging people through the dirt, the medical staff has to get out of what they're seeing patients in scrubs or, their uniform, go down, change in their other uniform, go down to the other side of base, do the training, come back, get their uniform on, and then go back to taking care of patients. That takes out an awful lot of time every time they do this out of patient care, and it just doesn't work that way. Also,
one more minute, Colonel. Just one more minute. Thank you.
I'm talking fast.
That's great.
We have a lot of point of injury training next. So when we started looking at how do we meet this gap, we started looking around at what they're doing in industry and what they're doing in academia. And like I said, I'm a big VR fan. So we started looking to see who had stuff in VR that we could use. We ended up using Wing Innovation funds because the DHA, the Defense Health Agency, wasn't quite ready to start funding us yet. So we used that. Also, a standalone server, and I'll talk about an ATO in a minute. We're working on Focus 3 headsets, but it took us almost 2 years to get funding to start using VR. When we can't use mannequins, we can use the VRAR. Next. So we started doing some pilot studies after we got our VR. We compared VR with high fidelity scenarios to generate the research that they need in order for the DHA to feel comfortable in funding this. And we, of course, show that there was comparable knowledge and verification and acquisition. We also used VR in team steps and shown that there was team communication effectiveness was very similar to what we have with high fidelity. Next. Next slide. So grassroots movement, we started taking the headsets everywhere to convince folks sitting in these medical training facilities that yes, indeed, VR and AR is the way to go. And in a second, I'll tell you why that was so important. Next. We also were a test site for AugMed and learned how to put our folks into augmented reality with the TCCC training and also the extract demo when we were trying to use MedicX. Next. So this gets down to kind of our challenges. First off, right now, we have not been able to get an authority to operate. In other words, to put our headsets and our VR program onto the DoD network. Also, there's some cultural issues. Most of my nurses, my med techs, my docs, they're a little older and they're not really accustomed to playing in VR and AR. They're very accustomed to high fidelity mannequins, which we just really don't have the ability to use. So there's some issues there. And in some issues, non-digital natives are like, my grandson does VR, but if we can get the headset on them, now they want to do VR. Funding has been an issue, of course, with everybody. Some silos of excellence. We have a few sites that really want to do it, and we're trying to push those to other sites. Also, as I touched on, patient care makes it difficult to get folks out of care to do simulation, but it's easy to get them out of care to send them down to a classroom to do a 30-minute VR simulation. And I can drop them into a tactical scenario that will truly stress them and have them running through tactical scenarios without having to send them to the other end of the base. Next. Oh, there we go. So what we have found is that VR and AR training is starting to address the gaps that we can't possibly meet using high fidelity training. And I can put them in situations and allow them that equipment that we can't get a hold of. I can put that in VR and AR and have them practice. So my number one goal is to have them ready for the next conflict and ready to roll out all their outpatient roles into trauma training and these med-surg roles in these ICUs. So really, we're looking at you guys creating the VR and AR scenarios that are going to help us be ready to go down range and make it cost effective, make it the most effective use of their time, and help them really, really be used to and stressed enough that they can function in that environment. There, did I make my time?
That was fabulous. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Colonel Lockhart. I really appreciate it.
Hang on 1 second.
Yep.
I'm gonna keep her for a few questions real quick.
Sure. I'm going to turn my camera off. That was terrific. Thank you so much for that. And I know you were in a big hurry on that, and we appreciate keeping with the time. Awesome job. I'm going to turn it over to you now, Matt. Thanks.
Yeah, so Colonel Lockhart, I know you have family obligations to get to, so I won't keep you for a lot of questions. I'm sure we'd love to ask you a lot of questions. I'm just going to ask one, though, which is just because you've been doing this, you're kind of one of the leaders in the space. You obviously brought this in yourself. You spoke to some of the difficulties of things like getting an ATO and getting approvals, funding, getting it outside of the silos. If you kind of could look 5 or 10 years into the future about where you see this, how you see this working, where do you see it working? Like, what is the path here? Do you see this being something that just gets enterprise-wide adoption across the Air Force, or at least within the medical community? How do you see it over the next 5 to 10 years? What do you think is coming?
Well, in an ideal world, the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force are actually bringing their medical services closer together under the umbrella of the Defense Health Agency. So in a perfect world, I see for 5 to 10 years from now that enterprise across the DOD that we're into VR and AR training, because to be honest, an Army nurse taking care of a patient down in Afghanistan is working next to an Air Force nurse taking care of a patient down in Afghanistan. So the training that's needed to get them down there is very similar, very, very similar. So I see us using AR to train them for their downrange mission. But in addition, using the VR and AR downrange, because just because you're sitting in a deployed environment doesn't mean that you're busy 100% of the time. There's a lot of downtime when you're deployed. We don't tell our spouses that, but really there is. So when you're down and you're deployed, you've still got to be keeping your skills up. So VR and AR is ideal that you train them before they go, and then downrange, you use VR and or AR to keep their skills up even when they're down there. And I really see that being across the entire DOD. We just have to find the way to communicate how effective it is in getting them ready for this next conflict. So that's really what I see is across the entire DHA, not just Air Force, and getting all those folks ready. I want to stress them before they actually experience it in real life. Great question. Thank you.
Hey, Matt.
Okay. Yes.
Do you mind if I just pop in with a question? I have a question really, Colonel, about you are moving mountains in terms of inspiring people to consider and look at this. And I wondered, are you able to inspire because your voice as a woman in this space, obviously already in a space that is a fairly heavily dominated by men, but I'd love to hear you speak just a little bit about what is that like, and are you able to inspire more women to speak up who are in the military to be able to help their units and their organizations move forward in this space?
Well, I do have to tell you that as senior military officers, most of the females I work with, they're pretty assertive females by the time they get to that rank.
I bet they are.
To be honest, and a lot of the chief nurses in the other facilities have also been pushing to have immersive technologies in their MTFs and finding creative ways to get that funded before the DHA as a whole starts. Like I said, we're pushing for them to start funding this, but there have been some very assertive females pushing immersive technologies in their own organizations. And to be honest, I see it on the other side of the Air Force also, on the line side also. We're a pretty assertive bunch in the military, especially by the time you get to our rank. I think I would see myself more as encouraging the military treatment facilities and the Air Force Medical Service to really get out of the box and look at immersive technologies as a whole, whether it's male or female working in the chief nurse role, but really giving the chief nurses a way to meet the training requirements that we're obligated to meet. Does that answer that? Like I said,
it completely does. It completely does. And I think that the fact that you're here and that Matt and our group has been able to have you here today, that speaks volumes. And I encourage your colleagues and others to join us here, because this is the kind of environment where people can begin to visualize and understand what that means. So thank you so much.
I'm going to be pushing it, by the way. I've only been in VR for 18 months. And when I finally found it, I was like, why aren't we all doing this? Right. So I've really been working on getting others into this environment. And certainly our females also, pushing the STEM. But yeah, when I came into it, I'm like, why aren't more of us doing this? So I've really been encouraging other folks. I really think it makes a huge difference for us in trying to meet our mission requirements. I think it's going to be great.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Matt?
Thank you again, Colonel Lockhart. We will let you get back to your family and the wedding.
Well, they just
yes, congratulations to your daughter. Yeah.
Yes. I'm like, hey, I'm going to sign in on the night before you get married. I'm like, oh, gracious. So thank you very much for asking me. I'll hang out here for a couple more minutes if anyone has any questions or anything else like that. But I'm going to take myself back to my chair if I can figure out how to do it.
Sure. Does anyone have a question on that side of it, Matt?
Caroline, we're gonna keep moving on the presentation.
Okay, sounds great.
So up next, another virtual presenter we have, and I'm trying to run the slide here. We have Phil Martin.
Phil Martin.
Inidec. Yep. Go ahead, Caroline. You've got him.
Sure. Well, I'm really excited to hear more about Phil and his background. He is the Chief Revenue Officer at Infinidec, and he's been a real strong evangelist in the space. He's worked in a whole bunch of different areas, but I really am excited to hear about the omnidirectional treadmill as someone who is a very big fan of something called Supernatural, which is an XR platform for exercise, but works in undersea a whole bunch of different areas. So Phil, please take it away and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, hi there. Great to be part of this. Also great to hear Cheryl. I had the pleasure of meeting Cheryl at IDSEC.
Of course.
Months back.
Of course. And I want to make sure that we have your deck here that's queued up. And there you are. Terrific. It's great to see your face.
Whoa, welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
Yeah, let me get that slide slowly moving. There we go. So, it's really exciting for me to be involved in this kind of event. The next evolution of the military, to me, speaks volumes for acknowledging the potential that the digital immersive realm offers to all sorts of areas that we consider as not necessarily focused that space. Could you keep moving to the next slide, Tom? Or Matt, sorry. So look, this is a very quick one about me. I landed in VR back in 2018. I worked in multiplayer arena scale free roam virtual reality systems. Now, that's amazing because it gives you an insight into the impact of movement, dynamic physical movement in the immersive space, and just seeing slack jaws on people as they, after 30 minutes, come out of whatever zombies playing dystopian experience they've been in, and just going, I didn't know that was possible to do. So that left me as I say here, fully immersed in immersion. The power of what this does is phenomenal. And Infinideck-wise, I first heard about it for what we do in 2019 on Smarter Every Day on a podcast, on a YouTube video segment. And it now has 9.2 million views, but it was a guy talking about the Ready Player One omnidirectional treadmill and saying it was a reality. And I watched this and went, that changes everything. Happily, fast forward 3 years and I'm asked to head up commercial operations for them. And I'm busy out there in the marketplace, whether that's the military, whether it's corporate, whether it's academic, wherever it is, preaching about the profound potential of movement in XR. I just throw in some three key facts there. I know people read quicker than I'll talk to this. So it is definitely true that although I think it's super cool what I do, my kids think it's far, far cooler that I once did VR with Mr. Beast. Next slide.
I love that.
So Infinideck, you can see in the background there, the omnidirectional treadmill. And it has a military twist because George's son, George Berger, the founder, was playing Call of Duty with his friends, and he and George thought, wouldn't it be cool if you could step inside the game? Nothing was out there. 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears and considerable expenditure later, George created and patented Deck, the leading omnidirectional natural gait treadmill. Smart Every Day featured it, generated a lot of press. It is in Ready Player One, and we'll see that in a photo coming up, but it is that actual treadmill. Currently, we have 50 odd units globally in use, just proving to people in the various use cases the power of integrating true multi-directional movement into virtual experiences. And nice, just because I like to share this, Infinideck is still a small company, and the founder is still the head of product development and inspiring what might happen in the movement sector of immersive experiences going forward. So if you could go to the next slide, please. I'll be pretty quick on this one. You can read it and see what it does. The pictures are possibly more illustrative. The one in the bottom right corner, Cheryl was actually there for that demonstration and walked through this as well. And I nearly put a photo up of her, but then I couldn't get hold of it to ask, so I thought I'd just leave one of our other folk for now. But this kind of staging is how the system really lets people find through whatever virtual mechanism it is, whether it's a headset, whether it's a projection cave, whether it's LED screens, how they can move inside VR and how they can then start to get the benefit of distance, of pace, of in that respect, and how that helps in imprinting what it is you're seeing at any one time. The difference in capability of being able to actually physically move in a digital experience that matches the real world movement to using a joystick and teleporting is significant. And rather than me tell you that, I'd like us to move to the next slide and run that video. This video, Malami, hopefully you guys can do it. Video that hopefully we're about to show just gives an idea of how this works in practice. Let me know if and when that's coming up.
Okay, give me 1 second here. I do actually have to do a little bit of transitioning, so just a moment.
Yeah, and while that's being done, this is a partner in Australia, Virtual Real, and they did the simulation for the Australian military. That green screen is a very cool staging of what's being done, and you'll know now why it's so powerful.
Okay, so there is audio with this video, so warning for everyone in the room in case this gets loud. I apologize. I'll try to control it. VirBela, I believe you're going to be hearing this through the microphone, so we'll see how this goes.
Yes, so hope it's not too loud. Yeah, hopefully that came through okay from your side. A bit of lag there, but that just shows the potential. The user there is walking in virtual reality completely naturally on an omnidirectional treadmill and working to clear a hostage situation in an environment that's been mapped out to represent this office hostage scenario. The ability to do that blew the minds of the Australian Defence Force. They came out and out of that and said, I just didn't think that was possible to do. And I think one of the things that all of us here are engaged in is showcasing the art of the possible right now. And then evolution of immersive tech in the military is turning what is the art of the possible now into the art of the tangible going forward. It's about expansion of capability. It's about greater effectiveness through harnessing those tools. But that's the bit where we want it to get to, and we're driving it, as Cheryl explained it in her presentation as well, driving to make this adoptable, scalable, and make it something that's tangible to the next evolution of the military.
Fantastic. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Phil. And I would like to now touch on a question that I had about, and sorry, I'm putting myself on camera here. So hi, everybody. I love this idea of this self-contained treadmill. Now, you mentioned that there are several units that are currently out in the world, in the field. Can you share a little bit about how that went in terms of deploying those units? Because it sounds like there's some, process to all of that. I'd love for you to speak about that if you could.
Yeah, that is something that you have to start with. So it's a heavily engineered product. It's very, very clever. However, it's been set up to make it relatively straightforward to deploy. So as I say, I've got a unit here, just literally on my left-hand side. We just ship those. We build them. We ship them wherever they're going to go. We sometimes deploy them with people, and then we send our guys out there, and sometimes they deploy it themselves. So it's relatively straightforward. It's about 700 pounds. It's movable. You can flip on its side and wheel it around. So actually, that's not the biggest headache. The biggest challenge that we face as the provider of what I actually call the movement platform for the metaverse is experiences to go on there. So, for example, when we're working with the US Air Force, when we're working with Accenture, we're working for Dow Chemicals, biggest challenge is getting the right kind of experiences in virtual reality or XR right now that users can take advantage of our system. And that's the biggest challenge, I think, in adoption of most of the capabilities that we have right now. It's the content needs to be capable of providing the kind of experience that folk need in the various scenarios they'd be working. That could be training, it could be research, it could be design, it could be learning, it could be collaboration. All of those different mechanisms for where XR fits in, they need the right kind of software to make it a valuable experience. And we're in that right now with VirBela. So for me, I look at that and go, yeah, this is nascent in terms of where it's going to get to, but we're all leading the charge. This piece of hardware is astonishingly clever, but we've got work to do to make it better. In the same way that some of the mechanisms for building software in VR are very, very cumbersome. We're not at the stage where life is, I don't know, Apple simple, for one of a better way of describing it. But we're heading that way, and I'm super excited at where we're going to be in 2 to 3, 4 years' time on all this.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it actually, I wanted to, lead into that a little bit by asking, where do you see, what is your view of the next 3 to 5? And I know 3 to 5 tends to be that really far out number, especially when we're talking about how quickly things are moving. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about where do you think this is going to go in the next 3 to 5 years? And really in terms of how the military can embrace this and how the technology will adapt and follow. I'd love to hear your perspectives about that.
Well, from our perspective, there's a critical element that we focus on in what we call the enterprise metaverse right now. By that, I mean institutions, so it could be military, it could be governmental, it could be corporate, but big institutions adopting the immersive technology to make their various enterprises either work better or expand their capabilities. So in the military space, for example, there's training. For every single dollar spent on a frontline troop, then there is $4 to $5 spent on service and maintenance. So be that aircraft, be that ships, be that tanks, be that whatever it is in the background, it then becomes critical to get the greatest level of effectiveness from that. And one example is the short-term stranded assets that, for example, of airplanes, when the Air Force has to park them to go and train new engineers how to service them. Well, you look at that and go, that is something where an Infinideck and a digital twin of a C5, C130, whatever, would make an awful lot more sense. And we've worked with the US Air Force on that. And one of their key influencers internally on understanding the ROI of immersive training told us that one of his initiatives to reduce the need to park an airplane training saved $12 million in one calendar year. He has 64.
Wow.
He has 64 initiatives. I mean, that's
crazy. Yeah, that gives you the scope.
$750 million just from the US Air Force says it can potentially save just from digital training. So then you think about, well, okay, how do we do that for research? How do we do that for collaboration? How do you have, for example, clandestine operations where you have people located in various parts of the world? They can suddenly get together on a digital mechanism and actually practice surveillance or whatever it is. Or you can have digital twins created in real time with LiDAR captures now, whether that's on quadrupeds, whether it's Spot the Dog or whether it's drones flying in, taking imagery, capturing it, sending it back, rendering it in real time, and then people walking through it.
And Phil, I know that my guests are right, my host here, and that is a great place to end there. Thank you. I'm so glad that you got to answer that question, and thank you so much. This is really powerful. There's so many more things we could cover, but I will let Matt go ahead and turn that over on your side of it. Matt, thank you so much, Phil.
Thank you, Phil. Well, hopefully we'll have some time at the end for Q&A from the audience. But we do have one more presenter, and oddly, I'm going to welcome Colonel Sage. as he's coming up, I'll introduce him. You know, for everyone who's in the audience who's working in the space, and for everyone who's watching this in the future, we've had a couple of technology companies. We've had Northrup Grumman here. We've had Infinidec. We've had a couple of people from the military space who've given their perspective. When we're talking about how you actually get innovative technology into the military, I'll let you take it from there.
All right. Thank you, sir. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Colonel Mike Whitefoot. I'm the Director of Intelligence, Surveillance, and Reconnaissance and Deputy Director of the Kelly Johnson Joint All-Domain Innovation Center, part of the Michigan National Guard. And I'm truly honored to be here with you fine ladies and gentlemen tonight. And I'm a student, so I'm here to learn, and it's fascinating already. I love learning, and everything that I've seen thus far is super exciting. So hopefully after our presentations later tonight, we'll have more time to get to know one another a little bit more. Next slide, please. Technology is our friend, right? And if you can advance to the next one when you have a chance here. So we start from the beginnings of why are we doing innovations in the Air Force? Why is it important? I hope that innovation, the word doesn't become like the internet was 20 years ago and becomes overused, because it really isn't. So the criticality for us in the Department of Defense to do things faster, better, more agile, not to take years and years and years to do things, but the things that you folks are doing on a daily basis. How do we get technology, build it, deploy it, and get it to someone that needs it very quickly, and not years or decades to do? The military is really good at long-term programmatic type of things. If we're building an F-35, it might take multiple years or decades to do something like that. But we understand, given the requirements of national security, that not everything can fit into that bucket. So from the Air Force innovation side, I would like to share that we are not in competition with acquisition, but we are a partner with acquisition to try to do things a little bit faster, a little bit more agile, so we can bring the type of technology that you folks develop every day into the military to work with our industry and academia partners. So you can see the slide here where we're going. We have AIM High initiative. This is a throwback to the foundational days of the Air Force, academic, industry, military, hybrid innovations is what we've coined this to be. And we are scaling this year, and our effort is to become the #1 innovation center in the Air National Guard. Next slide, please. Here we're going to see just the basics. Essentially, our goal is to make certain that we outthink, out-innovate, and out-compete throughout the military. We want to create airmen and warfighters that are superior, and we want to change the culture inside the Department of Defense so we're more aware, and we're more understanding, and we're more inclusive to bring our academia and industry partners inside with us to work alongside of us. Slide, please. One of the programs that we've started here in the last couple of years is the first thing that we needed to do is recognize that we need more education. So we created the AIM High program for Certified Professional Innovation Training. We've been doing this a couple of years now. We've had a lot of good success with this. This is a Certified Professional Innovation curriculum. Typically takes about 12 weeks to go through. And we work with the University of Michigan and also Duke University. So we're very much interested in additional professional education and training. Next slide. Okay, this is really getting to the heart of what we're here for tonight. How can we better use virtual reality, augmented reality, extended reality capabilities, applications to support our national defense? And this is a picture here with the Secretary of the Air Force that was with us this past summer up in Michigan. And our Secretary was actually going through a virtual tactical operations center experience. So in the military, if I'm in a command post how can I better use these tools to help inform our decision makers of critical decision points that they need? How do I pass information faster? Because the old days of printing everything out on computer printer paper or writing things up on whiteboards is just a slow way of doing things. And when we work in a distributed global manner, we have to be able to do things digitally, and we have to be able to share these experiences with multiple stakeholders and multiple decision makers across the globe simultaneously. Slide, please. Here's another slide. So the previous briefer I really enjoyed where we're talking about how do we use AR/VR. So one of the applications that we did here this past summer, it was one of our first experiments working with our partners, is how do I look at repairing an aircraft like the A-10 Warthog? How do I do something basic that's like a brake check in the live operational environment? So we demonstrated that for the first time this past summer, of actually taking someone that wasn't a top-tier skilled mechanic, taking someone that had basic knowledge of the aircraft, but how do I train that person to go out and do something that they're not necessarily used to doing, but can be assisted remotely? Someone else that's 100 miles away is talking to that member and saying, okay, this is what you need to do. Walk up to the aircraft, look at the tire, look at the hose assembly. Do you feel any heat radiating off the tire? So this was a hot brake check. So we're at the point where we're kind of at the crawl, walk, run approach with AR/VR capabilities. So we're really excited this next year on the things that we're looking at doing, and we hope to accomplish with all you folks and our other team members. Next slide, please. This is one of the, I think, great successes that we've had to date. It's something that Colonel Amchek and I and Colonel McDonald and our innovations team, we created what's known as a State Partnership Program Innovation Network. Currently, we have 4 states. We have Illinois, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Maryland. And our first real capability that we're developing is called the Rogers effort. It's the Rapid Operational Deployable Global Emergency Response System. What this is a VR headset company that we're working with in Warsaw, Poland, Rescue Glass. This is a capability that we are enhancing and furthering developing in partnership with the state of Illinois for our Poland partners. Help build a capability that we currently don't have. And how do I take someone that doesn't have, who might not be an emergency medical technician on the battlefield, but how do I take someone that has some basic skills? I put these goggles on, and I'm connected to a 24/7 medical operations center from the other part of the world. So where the person wearing the glasses who's trying to help a patient on the ground now is being given instructions by a nurse or a doctor to do advanced medical care in the field. Now, the biggest challenge that we had, I believe, to date in overcoming this is in a military application, we live in a world such as like Chicago per se, and you have cellular, LTE, you have Wi-Fi, it's ubiquitous. But what do I do if I'm in the military and I'm in a remote part of the world? So one of the things that we've done is coupled with another capability that's our MPU-5 radio set. That coupled with Starlink internet capabilities, satellite-based capabilities, allows us that extended reach capability that I can have someone, and we tested this past summer, we can have our medical staff over in Warsaw, and we were up in upper Michigan actually demonstrating to both the Secretary of the Army and Secretary of the Air Force with people that didn't have any experience on how to treat someone, walking them through how to help someone when they need advanced emergency care very quickly. And Matt, I believe we have a video on this. Does that work, sir? Video.
I'll bet he's queuing that up
Some of the
right
things
now.
that we see today says that we're moving in the right direction to help be a force multiplier, taking care of our soldiers and airmen on the field, getting them back to safety so they can get back into the fight as soon as possible. Illinois over here is partnered with Poland And they've got a great relationship that's gone on for almost 30 years. They're one of the first partnerships that we've had, and we've seen how it's blossomed over the years and the benefit that it has been where we find ourselves today.
We are training together, we have been deploying together, and now it's time for us to innovate together.
The Air Force Research Lab is here to look at some technology we have for our first responders, not only for domestic operations, but also things that we could help out with in battlefield operations. And that's to help with first aid, buddy care, or combat lifesaver.
I see. There is so many things that we do really well in the United States, and so many things that our state partnership program nations are doing together. Now this partnership is so mature that we have the ability to really share our best practices and forge our future together.
Well, I have to say, I really love that video. And what I love about that is the partnering of industry and academia and the military, as well as our partner nations. So not only do we have the United States, but we also have a very important partner nation, Poland, with us. And we're doing something that's truly revolutionary, innovative, agile, and we're doing it very, very quick. I think we've been working on this about a year now, right, Colonel? And is there anything else that you'd like to say on this, sir? Did I miss anything?
We'll give him an opportunity to talk on a microphone in a moment. For those of you in VirBela who weren't able to see the video well, I will post the URL as soon as I have a moment to.
That's fine. I actually suggested that people look at the right screen so we could see you all there showing the videos. So thank you.
So in closing, I'd like to say thank you very much for the honor of being here with you tonight. And I'm very excited to continue learning with you. And I look forward to talking more with you after our presentations are done tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm going to go through a couple of real quick questions for you. And then
the hard questions come.
And then we'll give you the opportunity for the audience to actually ask questions of any of our
Yes,
presenters shortly after that. But the first one for you in particular, just because you didn't seem to touch on this at all in your presentation, is talk about kind of your career path and how you got to this. Like, where did you came into the military, how did you sort of, as you moved up through the ranks, like, what did you do, what were your positions, and ultimately, how did you get into innovation and working with XR just through your career?
Well, that's I'm going to be brief. So I started my career, like Colonel Adamczyk, as enlisted. And I started out as an aerospace physiology specialist, and that was part of the medical career field. And I specialized in special operations support. And I was a jump master in the Air Force, helping develop the high-altitude parachuting program for the United States Special Operations Command. I've done a lot of different jobs, and as a colonel was sharing with some of our folks here earlier, the great thing about being in the military is the opportunity to do so many different things. Primarily, most of my career, I've been a special operations support member. I've done a lot of work in combat search and rescue operations and personal recovery operations. So I've had a lot of experience. This opportunity that the colonel brought to us here this past year really took me back a little bit earlier in my career, because when we talk about multi-capable airmen, which is something that we were talking about earlier, we talk about a focus area for the United States Air Force today. Today we're learning how to do things that are much more agile and much more innovative. So what does that mean? In the past, typically in the Air Force, we would deploy in maybe a dozen aircraft with several hundreds of people. Now we're being asked to go in smaller, leaner teams, and that might be 2 aircraft and maybe 20-ish people. Now, what that really means is we have to learn to do more than one job. So you might be a jump master like I was, but now you have to become a medic, and now you have to also become a security forces person. We have to learn how to do more skills. So this is something, this type of technology, I'm super excited about, because now instead of having to send someone to training for months on end to do some of the more basic things, but critically important things, such as perimeter defense. If I'm a mechanic, but I'm also going to have to now maybe do some of our security forces duties, I can leverage this type of technology and spin someone up much faster, where I don't have to send them to a 4-month or 6-month school because that's time I just don't have.
Okay, so last question, and then we'll get to the audience. There was a lot of publicity somewhat recently about the IVAS program, and particularly combat-specific XR headsets and things like that. And one of the things that kind of came out of that conversation, obviously, it wasn't looked at as the most successful program, basically because of things like the infrared and people not being able to wear one all day and things like that. Obviously, as you've already demonstrated, and I'm going to steal a term that I saw from somebody else on LinkedIn, which is there's a lot of uses for this technology left of bang, outside of the actual in-the-field combat situation, things like medical awareness, things like maintenance training. So the question, setting that whole thing up, is if you had an unlimited budget and unlimited capability, where would you go with the technology?
For the IVAS technology or ARV?
Anything XR, anything, what you've seen here.
So if
where
I
would you
might be
take
able to try to answer both questions. So I'm an engineer by trade. I've done a lot of development, prototyping, manufacturing, and so forth. I understand the challenges that sometimes if we go too quick, we're going to stumble. In my personal opinion, I think that may have happened in that particular application, is the technology wasn't really ready for full-scale deployment. In my personal opinion, I don't think the technology is improper or it shouldn't be used. But sometimes, and we were talking about this earlier, if you give the military people, we're really good, we're really harsh on things. And if you give us a consumer type of product and you put it in our hands as warfighters, we're probably going to be pretty rough on it and we'll probably break it. So one of the lessons that we could learn from this is as we're bringing things from the civilian world into the military, we might want to consider things like hardening and things like redundancy and resiliency. I think if there would have been more time, or maybe some folks along the way might have had the benefit of considering some of these things, I think that program probably would have turned more successful for us. I don't think it's a failure, in my personal opinion. I think it's a minor setback. I know several people that are working alongside that program, and I think the greatness of what has happened, even though there's been a speed bump here, is they have, on a very large scale, have demonstrated to the United States Army and Department of Defense true significant capability of AR, VR capabilities. So it's a momentary pause, momentary setback, but that happens in engineering. We've all been there before. What's more important to maybe answer your question is there's very few times, I think, in a person's career that when you can point to something, you can say, I know that this technology is significant. I would say in my 38 years of serving in the Air Force and being a professional engineer, I think we are at that point with AR, VR, extended reality. This is a very critical technology that I think that we should not only investigate and research, but in my personal opinion, I think that we should invest heavily in this because the payback in returns, just like we're talking about tonight, we're saving money, we're saving time, we're doing things faster. And you and I were talking earlier, one last comment, thank you for your time. So in the United States Air Force, we're training pilots and we're using AR, VR. And I might have the stats wrong here. It's been a while since I've read the report, but I want to say that in undergraduate pilot training, that we're training our pilots about the time that it takes to actually train a pilot is about half the time as what it previously was. What I do remember from the briefings that I had was the fact that we're taking young student pilots, by the time they get to the jet with their instructor, they're a much more capable, much more proficient, and much more skilled aviator. And so we're saving money and time and, most importantly, safety. Because if you make a mistake in the aviation environment, it has catastrophic consequences potentially. So if we can make our environment safer and we save money and we're doing it faster, I would say I'm all in for it, sir.
Thank you very much. Actually, don't actually walk off. Take a seat. Amie, come on back up. This is our chance for the audience. Ben, can you come over here? Actually, go over to Tom. There's a table in front of him with microphones. If you could just grab one. Do we have live question in the audience? We have a few minutes left that we'll do some live questions. This is your chance. And by the way, thank you, Colonel Adamczyk, for also joining us. He is here in the audience as well. We saw him on the video. And also, he introduced us to Colonel Whitefoot. But with that, we're going to go. I'm going to show you again. These are all of our presenters. Obviously, Colonel Lockhart had to leave, so she's not available to answer questions. But we will take questions from either in VirBela or in the live space. The way that this works: raise your hand. Ben will come to you. You'll be recognized. Or Caroline will raise her hand. If I see her hand to go up, I know that there's a question in VirBela. And Tom will let me know if there's anybody asking on AWE.live. I see one. I saw one back here. Yep.
Thank you, Colonel. Can you talk about some of those mistakes that saved a lot of money in the AR VR space?
So I could share with one of the goals that we're trying to do with our aircraft in the Air Force is, so we look at a deployed scenario. And the example that I would give you is an example that happened to me a couple years ago. So I'm in a helicopter, we're getting ready to take off in this Black Hawk helicopter, and the auxiliary power unit fails. Now, it fails at the top of the aircraft. There's literally, if you're familiar with like a stainless steel screw clamp that you have on your washing machine hose, that's how this assembly comes together. You have a piece of rubber hose that comes together on a stainless steel fitting. Clamp had loosened because of vibration over time. The two pieces had become disconnected. We're stranded on an airfield. We can't take off. And everybody knows, the pilot, the crew chief, we all know, we can see what the problem is. Nobody's going to touch the aircraft because we're not a certified aircraft and power plant mechanic. And in the military, you'll get in a lot of trouble if you just MacGyver things. In that environment, and I think the power of this technology, if we would have had a VR headset with us, we could have spoken to a mechanic that could have been hundreds of miles away. He or she could have guided our crew chief through that simple repair and visually been able to confirm and audibly been able to talk with our crew chief and made that repair in the field. Instead of us being stranded for several days out in the middle someplace, I've got an aircraft that's down, and it's costing the taxpayers a lot of money because we're not able to accomplish our tasking or our mission.
So we actually have a question from Aw.live, which is a fun one. And I'm going to direct this, well, unfortunately, Colonel Lockhart is not here anymore, but I'm going to direct this also at you, Colonel. The question, and unfortunately, I lost my text message now. It just timed out. But it was from, you know, you guys, both you and Colonel Lockhart spoke about the military kind of using civilian VR and AR technology. Is there, to your knowledge, any VR and AR technology that is being specifically developed within the military that would potentially have some civilian uses?
I'm going to make a gut check here. I'm going to say I'm sure there is, but it's outside my wheelhouse, so I'm probably not best to prepare to comment on that. So I think you got me.
Hey, Matt, can I chip in on that?
Oh, sorry.
Can I chip in on that?
Please, Phil.
So here's how it works from my experience right now. The US military is actually pretty forward-thinking. It's got a progressive mindset for this technology, and it's a pleasure actually to work with them. So I suspect that for us, with an omnidirectional treadmill that one day we see being an at-home device that everybody uses, the work we're doing with them could well end up being something that filters down towards a consumer level product at some point. So if we're doing that, I'm sure there's a number of other people who have these very constructive collaborative partnerships that are getting the same benefits.
Thank you very much. I see a question. Actually, I see two questions in front of you, Ben. Caroline, any other questions in VirBela? I'll throw the check out there just in case there's any raised hands I can't see.
No, I don't see any right now, but anyone here who wants to pipe in, I don't see any right now from the audience, but thank you, Matt.
Okay, I see. Go ahead. Yep. question in the room here in 1871? Saw two hands up. One of you guys grab it. There you go.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Hi,
Ladies
hi,
first.
Colonel.
Hi, ma'am.
My question is probably more of a curiosity point, and maybe there's no metrics for it yet. But when we're talking about war and just the fear factor, is there any way to tell, is this helping with people's fears, like not a PTSD, but a pre-trauma, where it instills confidence because they're going through training by rote using technology?
I would say absolutely. I was, talk for my opinion, I was an adjunct instructor for Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University for 24 years. In my role at the university, I was a human factors professor. And I know from my training and from my experience that more training that you do, whether you're a civilian emergency medical technician, or if you're a warfighter and you're training for a combat mission, we all know these things, like Colonel Lockhart was sharing. The worst time for any of us try to tackle or face a situation is a time that you've never been exposed to a simulation or an exercise. You never want to have to do the real thing for the first time. So in my own personal experience, and having been a training instructor to the military, we constantly are drilling, training, rehearsing, and so forth. Let me use a different example that I think that would maybe help answer your question better. So in my earlier years, we used to have a facility down in Florida for Air Force Special Operations Command, and it was essentially a battle lab. And it was a rehearsal area that was filled with models of buildings and facilities. And if we were going to go in and conduct a military operation into a particular spot in the world, it gave you sort of a realistic view of what the terrain and what the city looked like. Where I see this technology, and I have been working with some of our other partners, where I would like to help take this is in a live mission rehearsal operation, so that the next time a military member needs to go out, now this could be a domestic response operation if you have an earthquake or a hurricane, natural disaster, because we do that as members of the Guard, support those humanitarian missions, but also if we have to do a combat mission. If we can rehearse and practice the rest of that situation ahead of time, then I'm very confident that when we actually expose our people into that high-stress real-world environment, the nerves will be a little bit calmer. I would also share with you that the type of training that I've gone through, emergency procedure training, the more you go through this type of stuff, and you know your emergency procedures, your gas pump procedures, cold, warnings, cautions, notes, it's memorized. When you have an emergency procedure and you're faced with that, you're much calmer and you're gonna act. And I can say that not only from my experience being training, but I have had a few emergency procedures in the flight environment throughout my career. So I'm extremely optimistic and I'm extremely confident that this technology is going to significantly help us going forward.
Phil, did you want to respond to that too? I see your hand up.
Yeah, please, because what Colonel Wiper just said is spot on, but it's also excitingly something that we're involved with. Now, not happily, this is not me selling us. This is with the research that's being done. Human performance and how to optimize it. It's not just physiological. What XR enables you to do, especially with some of the EEG monitoring capabilities that people are using while folk are in VR, you can start to do cognitive and behavioral monitoring as well. So through virtual experiences, you can start to find a stage at which individuals have their cognitive performance compromised by the stress they're under. And that's what Colonel White was suggesting. It's that point where you can start to individualize that. So the research is actually going on right now with some of the folk who for that very idea where you can start to understand how each of us would respond in that scenario. That's incredibly valuable for soldiers who are going to be in the field. And imprinting the scenario multiple times reduces the stress load. And that's critical. And then the point about the emergency systems, having a space where you can practice what you might have to do in a scenario, using LiDAR scanners and drones and video footage. You can now render almost in real time with some of the evolutions on that technology right now. So we're working with in the UK, a unit who are looking to do 3 to 8 hours real-time rendering for special forces engagement in situations. So they will send in a LiDAR covered drone or video camera quadruped. They will get that data sent back. They will model the situation, and the special forces unit can be for them walking through that environment 8 hours later. That's astonishing capability, but it doesn't have to just apply to the field of combat. Again, like my wife was saying, it can be any emergency scenario, and that could be the Army Corps of Engineers going into a flood disaster or any other kind of natural disaster as well. But that potential is enormous.
The only other thing that I can add to that is just, again, from our experience, we've got a training session that in this last course, for instance, has got 30 guys, and they're doing training exercises on the water, and they only have the opportunity, because they're do it 1 or 2 times. And so the ideal scenario is that they're going to do it over and over and over again, and having access to the augmented reality. Do it over and over and over again. The only other thing that I did notice as well is that there were a couple guys who were definitely much more comfortable kind of taking a look at things on the side, on their and then coming back into the larger. So giving them the ability to kind of digest the information, even though they're working as a team, to be able to kind of walk away, get familiar with it, and come back and feel really empowered that they're going to do it well.
All right, I think we have time for one more live question. I'm going to ask our presenters, please limit time on the answers on this one. I don't know what the question is, but are you still going? You had your hand up earlier.
Actually, it was a comment I was going to make on something we were talking about earlier, which was just commercialization. So much of the Defense Innovation Unit, SBIR, all those efforts stress dual-use technology. So in that way, the Defense Department is developing commercial technology down the road.
Got that. All right. I have one question back here. We'll let this one be the last one then. We'll make it quick, and we'll give all of our presenters a chance to answer, hopefully.
What are you finding is moving more slowly, the technology itself or the culture of using VR, AR, XR?
And before anyone here answers, I'm throwing that one specifically to Aaron because we have directly spoken about that.
Aaron, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I would love to take that. The whole point of this whole talk is what's the future of VR, AR in the military? And I would say it's great to hear about all these use cases of specialized technology and what the colonel is doing with engineering a whole new headset. That's incredible. I'm sitting here just blown away and texting some of my coworkers how incredible that is. Unfortunately, I wrote down some notes before this, and I think that the near to medium term that I see with the military is shifting culture. And that comes through education. It comes through the effusion of this technology on different programs, and as we see we get actuals of savings on particular programs. This is ammunition that we as engineers can use to arm program managers and project managers to say, hey, this is actually something that you could use in your budget and something that you need in your budget. And it's kind of the dirty secret about military contracting is that it's all about the money. And so if you can make a good economic case for it, if you can shave some dollars off of a program manager's budget for R&D design or providing a different interface into a sensor or something like that, then that's going to be the real thing that actually changes the leadership's perspective on these things.
I'm going to ask if anyone else wants to jump in on the question real quick.
Sure.
Sorry, I think that the leadership has, in our experience, bought in very, very highly. They are all advocates. They're all very interested in how we can make things better. The hesitation or the challenge comes in, I think, just a little bit in making sure that the trainees understand that it's not replacing hands-on. That's a fear that's been expressed to us. Obviously, hands-on is the best first approach, and helping them understand that the supplemental is.
Go ahead, Phil. I saw you start talking.
Yeah, I'd say the two things rely on this. Technological process and user adoption do not follow a parallel path. They don't go hand in hand. There is a point at which technological progress enables user adoption on a widespread scale. The iPhone had it, I don't know, iPhone 3 or whatever it was. Technological process right now is pretty flipping close, in my view, to where we're going to see it scale out for widespread adoption. That's what's so exciting about this moment in time.
All right, your chance for the last word.
This is a great topic because I have been living this for the last couple of years. So at the risk of aging myself, maybe perhaps once again, so it's very difficult at times to change organizational culture. Even though older folks know that younger folks are very techie savvy and can do amazing things, and if you're an older person, you might have a harder time using the iPhone. So I think one of the things that's one of the bigger challenges, like the last gentleman was saying, is how can we maybe identify strategies or recommended best practices for, we know that a lot of decision makers in the civilian sector and decision makers in the military are going to be of an older class of men and women. So how do we maybe capture their attention to where they're listening to us? I think what I've heard here tonight with some of the presenters is, if I'm sitting on the other side, if you're telling me I'm going to save time and money, and the last gentleman talking about a program manager, because I've been a program manager, if you're going to make my job as a program manager easier, and if you're going to help me and my team be more successful and actually develop my capability and feel that faster, I think it's music to my ears, right? But also we have to understand that sometimes as older folks, we probably need a different way of communicating with older folks than we would with folks that are younger and very much, oftentimes, much more in tune with technology and the changes in technology.
All right, so we're pretty much at the end. So Caroline, I'm going to give you a chance to add any final thoughts before I close it up and thank our presenters.
Sure, I'll be really quick, and just to say that I learned so much tonight. I have not, I've interfaced with folks in the military in my years in Albuquerque, New Mexico, in the Kirtland Air Force Base and others, but I just think that it takes a village. I guess I've said this before. I really appreciate the way that our panelists and that everyone really recognizes that this is an effort that really looks across all entities: academic, government, military, tribal, private, public, everything. So I'm just so pleased that everyone here could come tonight. It means a lot, and I'm learning and growing just like everyone else is. And thank you so much. Terrific.
Thank you, Caroline. And the last thing, we were talking about this very early on before the presentation, which is the fact that in Chicago, I'm a Chicago native. I've grown up here, and obviously I work with BUNDLAR. We are a military contractor at this point. In Chicago, this isn't like selling to the military, being a military contractor is not one of the things that at least came to my mind first. I literally had an advisor that told us we should be selling to the military, and that's when we started doing the work. There's a DIU office in Chicago, in the Midwest. This is not, we are obviously a very technology advanced city. We have a lot of opportunity here. We have the #1 technology incubator in the world. Here, we're sitting in it. So it's one of those things that we think that, this relationship has only room to grow. And a lot of advancement. There are tons of AI companies here. There are tons of VR and AR companies here in Chicago that people don't actually recognize that. I think in 2018, I cataloged something like 60 VR and AR companies in the city alone. So there's lots of opportunity, and I just think this is one of those things that we really need to sort of foster the relationship and get it growing. From that, I have a slide here. I'm going to close out the event here. I do, again, want to thank all of our sponsors, all of our presenters and panelists. Thank you. Hopefully you guys will all be around. I will say I saw a lot of people taking pictures of slides. These slides will be available forever on the VRAR Chicago website. So if you want to go review the slide deck again, it will be available. It'll be linked to this event. There's an archive. And there will be the video. The video will be on awe.live also. With that, thanks again to our sponsors. Thanks to all of our volunteers. Again, this is a volunteer event. This is the NFT. I'll get back to it in just a second and leave it up towards the end of the event. But the one thing I do want to say, again, is please follow us on our social media. Keep track of what's going on. I don't know how many of you know that about a week ago, we actually had a no stage, no pressure, no panel social event at Redline VR. We're planning on doing stuff like that again throughout the year, now that we can all get back to being in person. Our next month topic, we're going to call it Key Learnings. I will say the full title of what it was originally, which is Key Learnings from XR Failures. We do have a pretty cool panel lined up to talk about some of the things that have, it came up again tonight. What are some things that didn't go well that we learned from? Because that's the thing, a failure is not a failure. It's what you learn from and how you take the next step forward. So that'll be our topic next month, March 1st. Please, again, follow us on our social media. Again, if anyone wants to sponsor the event, we would more than welcome it. This is a not-for-profit. It's 501c3 recognized public charity. And with that, I think I will just leave the QR code for the NFT up so that anybody can scan it either in the live space or the virtual space or on awe.live. We'll end the stage program here. Thank you very much for those of us live, those of us virtual, those watching on awe.live. Caroline, I am going to mute the room in VirBela now.
Good night, everyone. Take care.
Thank you so much.